The weekend, and we're covering breaking news this morning. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has died at the age of 71. In a statement posted on X, Graham's office said that he, quote, passed away from a brief and sudden illness. Before his time in the Senate, Graham was first elected to represent South Carolina's 3rd District in the U.S. House in 1994. He was first elected to the Senate in 2002 and was running for a 5th term in this year's midterms. In a statement this morning, Senate Majority Leader John Thune said that Graham was, quote, a strong advocate for the United States and a strong ally to freedom-loving countries across the globe. His influence on the federal judiciary, our national defense, and his beloved South Carolina will be felt for generations. Graham briefly ran for president in 2016, clashing with Donald Trump, but then came out to emerge as one of the president's closest allies in Congress. Trump posted to Truth Social this morning, saying that Graham was, quote, one of the greatest people and senators I have ever known. He was always working and was a true American patriot. Joining us now on the phone is Joe Scarborough, host of Morning Joe, who served in Congress with Lindsey Graham. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
We came in at the same time, in fact, in January of 1995. We were both part of that large class of 1994, the Contract with America class of 94. So, yeah, I got to know Lindsey very early and got to know him pretty well.
Yeah, and I saw that you just posted on X, actually, that you saw him not so long ago.
Yeah, I did. We would pass each other from time to time. I often would disagree very strongly with his policy positions, especially after he became such a close ally to President Trump. And he would, zing back here and there. But, we never had any tough words with each other personally. And we had just gotten together for the 30th anniversary of our 1994 class. It was a huge class and was the first one that had taken over the majority for the Republicans in 40 years. And so 60, 70 of us had come together just to meet back and I thought I'd bring my family along because of my younger children were not born when all that was going on. And so we met up with Lindsey, and it was just like the first day I met him. He was laughing. He had he's had a very self-deferential way about him, always joking about himself, always making himself the butt of the joke. So when we saw each other, he laughed, smiled, hugged, and made some self-deferential joke about himself, and then talked to my family. Mika was there, and a couple of my kids. Very, very kind. We had very kind words, despite the fact, again, that, I had been less than gracious with him on the air time and time again as it related to his alliances with Donald Trump.
Joe, it's Jonathan here. As we're looking at the pictures of Senator Graham, particularly with microphones in his faces, of reporters like Jackie Eugene, Michael running the halls of Congress trying to get comment from him, talk about the void he leaves now in the Senate, but also in the Republican Party, because you've butted heads with him. There are a lot of people who didn't agree with his policy positions or even his political maneuvering, but there's no denying that he was a force on Capitol Hill in the Senate.
Well, you talked about microphones. I don't think Lindsey would mind me joking about it this morning. It's a great loss for reporters. Because we always joked with Lindsey, where 2 or more reporters were gathered, there too would be Lindsey. The reason I got to know him pretty well is there were about 12 of us back 96, 97 that wanted to, we had a coup against Newt Gingrich, and we wanted to get him out and get a new speaker in because we didn't think he was moving fast enough to balance the budget. And so Lindsey would always volunteer that the meetings would be in his office. And so we did it for 2 or 3 times until we realized that every time we walked through for these secret meetings to overthrow the Speaker of the House, we would walk through a gauntlet of reporters from Roll Call and, The Hill and every other publication. We get inside, we go, Lindsey, you can't tell the press where our secret meetings are. And, the joke would always go around, love the guy, but you don't want him guarding the Pentagon. So I think though his real power came from, again, I heard it said at the bottom of the hour, proximity politics. He attached himself to John McCain and became inseparable from John McCain, and it was incredible. He adopted, John McCain's views, John McCain's policy positions, John McCain's approach to the Senate. I think we all saw the picture of Lindsey tearing up in the back seat of a car, talking about Joe Biden, what a great man he was, and that's what John McCain did. That's the way John McCain played. And then to jump from having John McCain as your primary sponsor to Donald Trump was quite a remarkable leap. And so, but still, interesting policy positions. I will say, and I've said it on my show, Iran's going to be part of his legacy, that war. I remember calling President Trump on the Friday before we went in, and I don't talk to him often, but I just got the sense that he was going to be going in soon based on my contacts, and I just tried to do a little bit of reporting, and then just as the guy who had known him for 20 years, I said, Mr. President, I just want to warn you, Iran's not going to be as easy as Lindsey says it's going to be. Just beware. And of course, he didn't agree with me on that one and went on with that war. But on the other side of the ledger, Lindsey has been a steadfast hawk on pushing back Putin and liberating the Ukrainians from the horrid fight that they've been under and endured. And I think I saw this morning, I guess he was over in Ukraine with Zelensky on Friday, and Zelensky was crediting him with being there 10 times. It could have been an older tape, but regardless, Lindsey was a steadfast supporter of Ukraine, and I can tell you that for those of us who think that the Republicans should be doing more to defend the Ukraine, I'm certainly grateful for that.
His last trip to Ukraine, he was meeting on Friday with President Volodymyr Zelensky. Joe, this is Eugene. I wonder, as you were alluding there, the foreign policy positions that he took were at one point the central facet of the Republican Party that you were a part of when you were in Congress. Right. And that has changed. And I'm curious how you think his leaving this earth, going to glory, as my family would say, is changing the space of the Republican Party when it comes to foreign policy.
I think it's going to really depend on what happens and who ends up replacing him. I will say with Lindsey, you saw still sort of that strong Reagan-like support of fighting against invading Russians and the Reagan-like support for democratic regimes across the hemisphere, supporting them or taking down Cuba, taking down Venezuela. But Marco Rubio certainly is there in an extremely strong position, and I do think you still have, from Rubio to Roger Wicker, another guy I came in with, who now is an Armed Services Chairman, John Thune, others. I still think that this strain of politics, sort of this hawkish strain of politics in the Republican Party, will outlast Donald Trump. And, it's interesting. Lindsey was pushing hard, saying he was going to get together with Democratic Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut to push sanctions bill relief. I'm sure there's going to be another Republican that's going to step into that gap. But there's no doubt that Lindsey was on the forefront, certainly, of that school of thought, even being with a president who had some very strange and particular views on what the U.S. should do and what it should not do across the world.
Joe Scarborough, getting up early for us this morning. Thank you very much for coming to the weekend.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you for having me. It's great to talk about you guys and to talk with you guys. And certainly I'm thinking and praying for Lindsey and all of his friends in and out of Congress.
And folks, and no doubt you will be talking about this breaking news tomorrow morning on Morning Joe. So we will catch you then, Joe. Joining us now, MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell. Michael, reaction has been coming in from around the world, but also from around the Senate. Any more statements coming out from the late Senator Lindsey Graham's colleagues?
Yeah, just within the last few minutes, we heard from Senator Thom Tillis, who is the Republican from North Carolina, at times at odds with somebody like Senator Lindsey Graham, but still had a lot of praise for him. I'll read to you right now, quote, "I'm shocked and saddened by the passing of my friend and colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham. Lindsey was a lifelong public servant, a tireless champion for South Carolina, and an outspoken advocate for America's role in protecting freedom throughout the world. Susan and I are praying for Lindsey's family and his staff during this incredibly difficult time." Again, right there, talking about promoting freedom throughout the world. What we said before was what really led Lindsey Graham and his work on Capitol Hill: national security, defense, foreign policy. That being said, I want to draw your attention to another statement we heard, not from the Senate, but from the House, from Congressman Mike McCaul, who previously chaired the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the Republican from Texas. He also spoke about this matters of foreign policy that Lindsey Graham so much so championed for the Republican Party and for Congress. Mike McCaul writing in quote, "We shared a similar worldview that America is strongest at home when we are strong abroad. We worked together on many foreign policy issues, including the Russia sanctions bill." And then he's going to continue his legacy. Mike McCaul says, "I'm introducing the House version of that bill this week, and Congress should pass it in his honor. Above all, Lindsey was a friend, and I will miss him very much." So again, these condolences coming from around the world, as you mentioned, but also from within Congress, not just the Senate, but also the House. Lindsey Graham being remembered for a lot of reasons, but one of them being how he championed national security, defense, and foreign policy on the international stage.
When you think about the Senate, like one of the core parts of the Senate is the relationships, right? And like they are lucky to have 6 years at a time because they're able to build relationships. They don't have to worry too much about being elected every single 2 years, which it helps with that. When you think about his legacy of at one point being, and even to this day, working on bipartisan pieces of legislation, being someone who, as Joe mentioned, got teary-eyed talking about Joe Biden in 2015, right? All of those kinds of things. It harkens back to a time of yore, and a time I think that a lot of senators, when I talk to them, want to get back to.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things about talking about when we talk about Congress. In the public view and when the cameras are on, it's rancorous. There's no doubt about that. It gets contentious, and members feel like that's just what they have to do politically. But when the cameras are off, or when folks are out of view of the cameras, it's completely different. You see relationships between Democrats and Republicans, conversations happening. On the Senate floor, reporters can't be watching the Senate floor when you have your cell phones. And so the only thing that can be seen on the Senate floor is in the view of the C-SPAN cameras that are fixated in very specific positions. So reporters like myself and others will often put our phones away and will go watch the Senate floor, because it's some of the best reporting. Sometimes you can see who's talking to who, what conversations are happening, and you see these bipartisan conversations happening. These people are friends. They spend a lot of time with each other in the Capitol. They have conversations. Lindsey Graham was one of those. So while we know that there's politics always being infused in everything we talk about in day-to-day right now, there's also a personal aspect to it. And these folks are also colleagues. And even if they disagree on some matters, they still can get along at the end of the day. It's that old quote, you can disagree on something, but don't be disagreeable. Folks may have a lot of disagreements with Lindsey Graham, but at the end of the day, people serving on Capitol Hill liked serving with him. Claire McCaskill, I was on with her earlier. She was talking about Senator Lindsey Graham's wit and comedic humor, and said that sometimes he drove her crazy for the things he was doing, but at the end of the day, they work together on some bipartisan issues and they find reasons to get along. I think that's something that's going to shine through as we continue to see these messages of condolence come in.
And the one thing that you could say about Lindsey Graham that separated him from the rest of some of his colleagues at least was whatever he was saying to those microphones, to reporters publicly, he was probably saying the same thing behind closed doors. He was pretty much a straight shooter sometimes to a flaw.
MS Now's Michael Schnell. Thank you. We're very lucky that you were here this morning. Well,